And now for today's discussion, we have Themba Lukele, author of the inspirational biography Through It All. Themba wrote the book during his 3.5 years spent at Boksburg Correctional Center before his release on parole. He faced the struggles that many youth are exposed to. The book forms a handy guideline on how to overcome your past hurdles and still remain motivated. Now joining me in studio is Themba Lukele, author, businessman, motivational speaker, aspiring musician and philanthropist. And we also have Joey Ramore, who is a life coach. A very warm welcome to you, gentlemen, and thank you so much for your time.
Greetings, dear sister.
I want to start with you, Mr. Lukele.
Yes,
most of the time when people come out of jail, it is rare to find that they will go out and write a book and be inspired, motivated to do so. You came out of incarceration and wrote a book and touched lives. What inspired you to come out as a different ex-con?
I guess, I always refer to Anthony Hamilton. He wrote a song that says, life is a way of humbling you down. So I was humbled by the storms of life. And I decided, if you are down and out for the last and the final count, the only thing that happened, or if what is so will, you can only go up. So I felt, I was really, that mustard seed. I was a bomb that is ready to explode, full of life. And I said, let me just change my life and change other people's lives, because to be incarcerated, it's no small feat. If you find yourself behind those gigantic walls and gates, it's really humbling. It's a humbling experience, because before I went to prison, I've owned a fleet of cars, meaning luxurious cars, and then I lived in the prime suburbs. But when you get to prison, you think when you're outside you're a god, but you get to prison, you realize that you are a none.
Mr. Ramore, I want to bring you into this conversation. Do people get rehabilitated while in prison or after spending time in prison?
They do get rehabilitated whilst in prison, but it all depends, because let me take you back. I used to run a prison ministry. I used to talk to inmates. I used to preach to them. And what I've realized, that it's not everyone who is in prison is a criminal. Some of the people that are in prison, they are there to find themselves. Either you are in prison to find yourself, or you are lying on a hospital bed to find yourself. So yes, people do change when they are in prison, because now this is the place where you are confined. This is the time where you do a one-on-one with God. This is the time where you have a conversation with the inner person. Remember, when we are outside, simatasa, we are busy. As he just said, he used to own a fleet of luxurious cars.
He was living a good life.
Yes, he was living a good life, which means now he never had time to talk to himself. He never had time to have a conversation with God. And in one way or the other, he had to go to prison so that he can find himself from prison, to find the reason why God created him. Some of the luxuries and the life that we enjoy out here, we even forget why God created us. God did not create us to come and consume. God created for a purpose. And fortunate enough, out of prison, you'll get people who become pastors. Out of prison, you'll get people who really find themselves. They change for the better. Now, as for Themba here, I'm so proud of him. These are the type of people that I want, so that once you go through certain things in life, you don't own them. He does not own the hardship that he went through. But what he's doing, he took that as a messenger to say, let me take this message, go and spread it. I don't want other people to go through it like I did it with myself. I believe we are born to serve, as I said. And I said, where do I serve? Why did God create me? I ended up serving in prison, which means now I served my sentence before I was incarcerated.
I just want to remind our viewers at home that you too at home, you can also join in the conversation, and you can also call us as our numbers are on screen. Themba, are you different to the Themba that was in prison?
Yeah, I can confirm I am very different, because I believe I am cut from, the different or a different cloth. When I went to prison, I realized, Uguti, prison is real and prison is rife. And if I can tell you now, Uguti, prison is more dangerous than the battlefield. In the battlefield, Uguti, I could be shot at any time. But in prison, anything can happen anytime. So my fear was, I'm in this, solitary confinement in a 3x3 meter cell, and then you're getting sick. What if you get an asthma attack or what have you? And there are rules and regulations, the laws that governs the prison. So it simply means for them to be able to unmask or to open the door, it might take longer than expected, and you might find yourself being a number. So I said, do I want to join this thing, or I am here to change prison time into the best time of my life? I did exactly that. And I was co-opted into a chairperson of the biggest structure or an organization that was running in prison. And what we were addressing are just social ills and, attacking the issues of gangsterism, your drugs and substance abuse. And all the time when I go around and tell people about God, about prison, I always say, for you to become another man's wife in prison, chances are very real.
And I want to talk about the criminal activities that you've been involved in. I want you to just take us back and just to find out what else did you actually do when you were not in prison, before you got into prison, of course.
Okay. I would say the inception, they are saying the beginning, it is the most, or formation. So where I grew up in the dusty streets of Katlong, that is a Guru Lane. So around the times of political, violence and upheavals. So my house and home was chosen as a base. So I used to camp with many cadres who were relentless in their quest to make sure that they protect their own community. So I had found myself exposed to all sorts of, arms and ammunitions. One day I decided to steal one of many guns. That was the biggest mistake, that I have made, in life. And the reason why I did that, there was no specific reason. I cannot even put the finger on the why, but Themba wanted to be hero worshipped. So one thing led to the other. I went to school, I was hero worshipped, and then I decided to engage in criminal activities. And then I started with smaller little things, and then from there I went knee deep. And now, until the media had labeled me as a kingpin and a mastermind in serious robberies. So the media said, Themba, he's actually the guy who has arranged a reign of terror in most parts of the country in South Africa. Hence, they said it's a kingpin or he's a mastermind. So for now, I'm saying I am no longer a prisoner of the past. I am the pioneer of the future. And we can no longer change the past, but we can only change and influence the future.
I know that you're also involved in hijacking as well. And most of the time when it comes to hijacking, you turn somebody's life upside down. And there are people who don't know that in the case of hijacking, what should you do and what should you not do? Because most of the time it is said that actually it's what you as a victim do that ends up where you will end up getting killed. Let's talk about that in terms of advice when it comes to people who might be prone to hijacking.
Okay. All right. I think we all know that a man who is not at peace with himself cannot be at peace with the universe. So most of the time, when we commit all of these senseless crimes, the only thing is just greed, and you want self-gratification and you want validation. So when you approach a person, you must just know, Guti, before you are fighting with an enemy, you must disarm the enemy. Remember, this person is unexpectedly so. You are just relaxing, cruising with your family, in your wonderland. Probably you are like Moses, who was in his own comfort space until God said, I wanted to use you. He took him into the wilderness of his life. Then if we rock up, you must know, Gucci, it's just one man to beat. Understand, this person, you are, approached flat-footed. So most of the people, they panic. That's where the problem lies. If you panic and then you want to unbutton, you want to take out your seat belt, and then remember, an attacker or a thief, you are making sure, Guti, nothing will ever go wrong. Because if something goes wrong, your ticket, you have booked yourself a ticket to prison. So most of the time, people, they find themselves hurt or they even die in this, in the time of these crimes when they are committed. It is because of you are caught unexpectedly so. So you are overwhelmed with emotions and you want to react. And unfortunately, your life will take a nosedive.
Now, most people would say that hijacking a cash in transit a vehicle is not supposed to be easy. I don't know if you have realized that a lot of that is taking place across South Africa. But looking at how criminals have been doing it, people have been saying that it seems easy. But from your perspective, where do you think the loopholes are when it comes to that? It seems as if it has become easy.
You know, the other day, I was talking to young people at the Constitutional Hill, and I said the most intelligent people are in prison. You find the most intelligent people. Let us not undermine them. I am not saying I am idolizing or glorifying criminals or people who are behind bars or inmates or ex-inmates. I'm just saying most intelligent people. If you reason with me, think of somebody who is hacking a bank. That particular person, you spend significant amount of time thinking. Before you go and commit a crime, there is something that is called a pre, where you plan, which this is how I'm going to carry out this whole thing. Whereas those people, they are just obviously relaxing to override the systems and all of that. It takes somebody with that great intelligence to be able to do that.
So, Ramore, you have had encounters with prisoners a lot.
Yes.
What have you noticed that stands out the most when you have sessions with those who have been incarcerated?
What I've realized is some of the people that are in prison, they actually, I always say to them, dish, be in prison, body, mind, and soul. Because if you are in prison and then your mind is outside, the chances are when you go outside, your mind will be back in prison. So the chances are you are going to commit the second crime. So now, in other words, it's when people go in, you need to go there and find why are you there. You understand? And why am I here? It's not about the people that actually laid charges against you. You know, there are people who don't heal when they go into prison. They will hate the person that made them to go in prison, to go to prison. But what I normally say to them, I'll say, why must you hate a taxi driver that took you to your destination? To me, prison was like a destination. The crime that you committed, it was a way of taking you to go to that corner and speak to God and find out why. The other thing is, people, you know, commit bigger crimes. But there are these ones that are committing petty little crimes like stealing a handkerchief from Pep. You know, I asked them, I said, how can they, you know, arrest you for a mere handkerchief? Do you understand? So which means now, going to prison is as easy as ABC. Anybody can go there. That is why I served my paper, my sentence before I was actually, you know, incarcerated. Because I know we are all born to serve. And how do you do that? Now, this is the one problem is, we as the community, I am here to plead, to say, guys like Themba, can we as a community accept them back? Because sometimes we as a community, we are the people who are pushing the people back into prison. Because when a young man like this one comes here, he wants to prove that I'm a changed man. I am here to serve. I've given up on what I used to do. And we as a community, we still label them. And then they end up saying, it's better inside than outside.
True. But now looking at Youth Month, our youth today at a very young age are getting involved in criminal activities. Parents are struggling to make sure that their youth are on track, are on the right track. Mr. Ramore, what seems to be the issue when we're dealing with our young youth today?
Our young youth for today, I think they put themselves under pressure, to be honest with you. They want to associate with, you know, guys like, you know, Themba in the olden days. They want to be these. But what I would say to them is, identify the battle. We all have got our own battles. You know, stick to your lane. I remember before I even wrote my Facebook, I said, I identified the battle in my family, and the enemy in my family was poverty. Then I did not go and commit crime to fight this. Because for me to go and commit crime, it was like solving a long-term, you know, problem with a short-term solution. Crime will always be a short-term solution. I said, here is this poverty, This is an enemy that I identified in my family. What am I going to do about it? What is the best, weapon to use? And I realized the best weapon to use, against this enemy was education. So I stick to my education. Despite what I went through, the poverty, going to school without shoes, going to school with my father's safety boots. Do you understand? But it was my way of fighting this thing. I did not take a beeline. And then the youth of today need to understand, because they are fighting all the battles. They don't choose. Some of the battles that they fight, they are actually not theirs. I've seen youth that are fighting, a 17-year-old will be entangled in the parents' divorce. It's not your battle. By the time you need to fight your battle, you'll never have any strength. So we need to identify, is it worth, some battles are not worth fighting. This is what I'm telling to the youth. Some of the battles are not worth fighting. Some of the battles, you need to wait, identify them, so that you know what battle are you fighting and what to use and what is the long-term solution to that.
Now, we do have a viewer joining us. Moshe from Val, thank you so much for staying on the line. What is your comment or question this evening?
No, I want to comment to say Almighty God doesn't only save people who have gone through the key of prison. I'm saying you can get sick, you can come from accident, but Almighty God will save you. That's my share. That's my personal view.
And Moshe, when you look at ex-cons coming back into society and the community, what do you make of that?
No, they add value. They add value because they add value by assisting the community. For instance, there's another gentleman, I won't call his name. He was coming from prison. But that gentleman, what he's doing is cooking food and doing sewing for community people. Very good thing.
Thank you very much.
Out of that.
Thank you very much, Moshe, for calling in. Thank you. He's calling from Val. I'm going to come back to you, Themba. I want to talk about your book. You have said that your book forms a handy guideline on how to overcome your past hurdles. And I also wanted to find out, how long did it take you to write that book?
I would say the duration, of the 3.5 years that I've spent behind bars, because the first thing that I told myself when I started serving, I said, I'm going to hit the ground running, and I'm going to make sure that I turn this present time into the best time of my life. So it was more like I don't have a choice, but I was supposed to make it big. And remember now, I have worked in my primitive years, I have done whatever that I had done, but now that book and that chapter was done. And life has a script for us all. And all the time I say, life is not an audition. You get only one chance to play your part. So it was very imperative or very important for me now to sit down and say, let me just pen down my thoughts. So all the fires that were burning in my life, I said, I am going to reduce them into writing, and I'm not going to hold back. But a man who can visit his dark tunnel, that's a man of God's choosing. And a man who can go back and face his imperfections and acknowledge them in public, you must just know, good to know, that man has really made a conscious decision. So I said, okay, right now, this is going to be a book, not only, I was not writing a Bible, but this was a Genesis to Revelations, where I would just open, because there were a lot of questions in saying, if this guy, the media has labeled him as a kingpin and a mastermind in serious robberies. They said he was involved in all sorts of heinous crimes against humanity. And then what are you saying? I said, I am not, going to go around or validate any speculations and assumptions with an answer. But let me just make sure that I communicate what is my God saying about Themba Lukele as a person. So I said, let me acknowledge, and a man who can actually face you and say, I am sorry. It is very important. And you cannot give what you don't have. So I realized, there was a missing ingredient in whatever that I was doing, which was love. So now, love is a doing word, and you cannot give what you don't have. So I said, I've got nothing but love for the young people. I'm talking about the kids, the boys at school. I've got 3 boys myself. And I said, am I living and leading an honest life? What kind of a role model am I if my boys are going to hear about, their father in the now. While I have got a chance, the government has actually granted us opportunities. So I said, no, let me just take the leap of faith and forget. And remember one thing, if you are a young man at home, not everyone will agree of the changes that you'll make in your life. I'm definitely sure even some of my friends, they are still in limbo. They are still saying, nay, you're going to get the naysayers. People are saying, this thing will never amount to nothing. When I started writing my book, the prisoners, they used to come at my doorstep in my cell. They would say to me, Temba, you have done greater things than us in life and in your time. And we know, Guti, this is not you. You are just putting up an act. One said to me, Mena, let me take it a step further. I got here, I was embracing Islamic religion, and I embraced Chembe. I was a Zionist next month, and now I'm a Christian. Now you are drunk. You are drunk, my guy. You are still going to come back. You are going to be humbled. In prison, you are only doing this because it's a front or it's an act. And I said to them, watch the space. What I am doing, I don't need or seek any validation from any human being. This is between myself and my God. Hence, I decided to say, head of prison, area commissioner, can I be granted an opportunity to stay on my own? I used to stay with at least 35 men, changing faces, people from all walks of life. And I said, I want to be alone. And I didn't have a TV, I didn't have a radio, because I was a man on a mission. So if you don't know who you are, definitely people, they always tell you who you are. And the friends that we keep around, it is always a problem. Human beings are like tea bags. If you obviously boil water and you put tea bag, there will be there's a dilution. So if now you don't take over, obviously they consume you. So I said, no, man, I'm rising above the storms of life. I am going to take charge. I'm going to take full responsibility. I can no longer change the past. I can only change and influence the future. I'm not justifying. I know it is very difficult for you to walk out of those gigantic walls, and gates, not having a plan. It is disastrous. Definitely sure you are booking yourself a return ticket. So if somebody is an inmate, or you've got a family member who is an inmate, you tell them, Uguti, as a belief, just write down and know where you are going. Because if you come out, you don't have a plan, it's definitely a problem. I opened companies while I was still inside the prison. And I said to myself, now I'm going to build, work from here backwards. Apostle Paul, he says, I forget all things that I've done before. They are now behind me. I stretch myself to what is ahead of me. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm touching life.
So you're saying that you opened companies while you were still in prison?
While I was still in prison, I opened all the bank accounts.
How possible was that?
It was very possible because everything is electronically now. And obviously opening a bank account, even inmates or, you call them convicts, you are allowed, obviously, to open your own bank account. So I opened a bank account so that when I come out, I know Guti Temba is going to hit the ground running. So now I know Guti opportunities. I'm still, fighting to rise above the storms of life. But if you have a direction, Advocate Pilis Lekan, he said something very profound. He said, if you've got a purpose, if you understand the definition, it is a God original intention about your life. So there was a God original intention about my life. It's just that my vision was very blurry until I met up with the calling, the purpose in prison. And then I said, nah, I am not going to look back. I grabbed the opportunity. And because God schedules your appointment with success, but you must be very careful, Luguti, when the opportunity is presented to you, you are able to identify, Luguti, this is the opportunity. So when the opportunity was presented to me, I entered those gates with thanksgiving in my heart, and I said, I will never let go, because that was my second chance. Our God is not a God of second chance, but He's a God of many chances. Sometimes you do the crime, and then you must be prepared to do the time. Sometimes you don't get a chance, like Utemba Lukele, to come back. Don't commit crime and think go to jail and then come back and write a book. Other people, they are not so lucky. So I'm very humbled today to form a part, of this joint sitting, telling the life story as is.
We do have a viewer joining us over the phone line. Yusuf calling from Pinoni. Thank you so much for calling in. What is your question or comment this evening?
Good evening. I'd like to make the comment is, you see, the today's children is, they have their own thinking abilities. And most of them, they feel that they're living under their own skin. The thing is, you always fear your Lord, which is very important. And once you're conscious about your Lord or your past, you should not forget your past. It's very important because today you might be a wealthy person and in your past you were going through poverty. Now, oppression and poverty is slavery. So you should not forget your past in a way that that will always bring you back on track. Because we all have expectations, but at the end you should not forget your past because your expectation might be very high, but you might be coming from poverty. Yes.
Thank you very much, Yusuf. Temba, what do you make of that comment from Yusuf?
Yeah, no, it's very important because you need to connect. Hence, I said, I don't care whether you're embracing what religion, but most importantly is you need to be solid-based. A house that is divided against itself, it will fall. So, therefore, we need to have some sense of belonging. And if you don't, belong anywhere, that is why a lot of people, when you get to prison, they belong to AMA gangs. There's a 6, 27, 8, Big 5, Ref 4, Air Force. It is because you are floating. So if you are floating and idling, something is about to give. I mean, they will convince you because you don't know who you are. So Tina will recruit you and then we tell you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So what I did with my team, we said we need to put a stop because we must understand that when we are in prison, there's a community within the community. That is why we are called the offender population. So I said, I am going to run with this banner. Today, I spearheaded the campaign of development and rehabilitation because I know for as long as if prisons are still there, people are still going to go there. One friend of mine said something very profound. He said, when you're thinking of people, otherwise you're wishing people away, that's committing crime in your own, brain. The only thing is there's no direct imprisonment in that. So a lot of people, they commit crimes, but it's just that they are lucky enough, to still be outside. But if you find yourself, behind bars, you will be called the reject of the society. You will be called the black sheep of the family. You will be called a bandit. So all of those names, I tell you, they will dampen your spirit. At some point, you wake up early in the morning and think, this is what I'm about to do today. But when you think about now this mark, and everywhere you go, this flag, it's always there, and it will follow you to the grave. So once you book yourself that ticket, you must just know that there is no coming back. So I said, let me just build from here. I can no longer change anything that happened in the past. And when I think about the things that I've done, they make me leave my head in shame. But am I going to be shameful about this situation, or I'm going to make sure with all these lemons, I turn them into a lemonade? And then I became a fully-fledged businessman, and I said, Utemba, I know he's got a very good business acumen. I was born to be a leader. I never followed anyone. I'm not a co-steering. I'm not an also steering. I am a steering in my life. And I said, God has blessed me so much with this brain. But how did I find myself, behind these walls? And how did I find myself in this whole mess? But I realized, Guti, there were just a lot of things that were happening around my life. Because when you're cocooned in your own luxury, you think you're a god. But once you find yourself behind bars, you realize you're a none. You'd be lucky to have 3 people around you.
And you also talked about fires burning in your life while you were still in prison. Just take us through the worst moment that you were able to overcome while you were in prison.
I remember when we woke up early in the morning the other day, right next to my cell, one of the inmates decided to take his own life. This guy was dead. And you must understand that they need to perform whatever. So this guy was there for hours and hours. We were watching his body. Yesterday, I was talking to this guy. Early in the morning, I was talking to this guy. All of a sudden, this guy is no more. So I was looking at that. I'm thinking to myself, I'm saying life is too short. I realized again, I said, no, man. We, stay for too long before we start living our lives. Let me start living my life. My daughter came one day to visit me in prison. When she came, it's called the cashless system. So she looked at me and then she said to my daddy, I heard that you are really suffering here in prison. I've got a little token for you. When a mom gives her money, she was saving the money so that she could be able to hand it over and give it to me. Can you imagine a 4-year-old? My heart sank. I cried myself to sleep that night. And then she took the 50 rand. She knew what was happening. And I said to myself, yeah, no, this is seriously a problem. And not only us who are suffering, even the people who are warders or wardens. The problem is the difference between us and them. We wear the orange uniform, they wear the brown uniform. We stay in prison and then they sleep at home. That is the difference. But when you are incarcerated, they don't carry cell phones. It's almost the same thing. So that is why I say, for a young man to find himself behind bars, it's a no-no. Not on this day and age. You're on 2018. I mean, the past is the past, and we need to build from now going forward.
Mr. Ramure, let me bring you into the conversation. Does it come from within to change, or programs need to be put in place for prisoners to come out rehabilitated?
It comes from within an individual. While you are in there, what you are going through, and then what is it that you aspire about in life? What is it that you want? What is it that you want to change about your life? That's when I say we're talking about your inner conversation. It's like in the Bible, the Revelation says, I saw a new earth and a new heaven, because the old heaven and the old earth are gone.
Yeah.
So now, you need to envision yourself. You need to see yourself a better person outside the prison. You need to build it. You know what Temba just said? While he was in there, he was working on a new Temba that he sees outside, a new Temba that is going to impact on lives. Now already, on its own, it becomes a commitment. He committed himself to that, to say, when I leave this place, this is the type of life that I want. This is where I am going to. I am going to save my life. I'm going to save lives as well. I'm going to talk to the youth. I don't want, he actually took that pain of being in prison. He took it on behalf of other people. He doesn't want to see somebody going through what he went through, which is to me very important. If all the inmates can think that way and say, I don't want people to go through this. I don't want my child. I don't want anybody to live the life that I am living now. But you don't only end there. You said, what is it that I am going to do? What strategies? You put the strategies together. But if you say to yourself, when I live here, I'm going to change, but you don't start, you don't have strategies, definitely Temba said, you are on your way back. You need to have strategies in place. You need to know what you want. You need to see yourself out there, and you work on this thing. The Bible says, walk into that room, shut the door behind you. Meaning that envision, in that room is a new life. See that new life unfolding in front of you. So forget about the past. Now, the people in prison as well, they need to understand they are not only there to commit crime and come back and commit more crime. They are there to find themselves. That opportunity, whether it's a month or 3 years or 17 years, but it's an opportunity. Make use of it. To say, when I leave this place, how am I going to impact lives? How am I going to do it? Strategies come in place. But the most important that I'm starting to share now is, while you are in prison, a lot of people will lack this thing, the 5 pillars of personal development.
Temba, I'm going to come to you. In terms of the programs that they had in prison, did they play a role for the new Temba today?
Of course they did. But there's a passage or a phrase in the Bible that says Satan is irredeemable, and then so is other people. You can speak until you are blue in your face, but they have told themselves, Uguti, change is a myth. This thing will never happen. So, and when I was that recipient, I said the people who were actually rendering those services, I was one of the people who were, I would say, teaching other inmates, because they said, Temba, I think you understand this thing better. So I was actually narrating, I was running those, I was very flexible when it comes to these things. And I got the best Christmas ever. I was sentenced to spend 3.5 years behind bars. So in parole board, they are the ones who are your custodian. They are responsible actually for your freedom. So what they do, they call you, and then they evaluate and they check if you qualify to be reintegrated back into the society. So they asked me a question, we talk Temba, what makes you think, Uguti, now you qualify to be released or to be reintegrated? And I said to them, it's very simple. And then I've got my own Bible. This is what I've done while I was still in prison. And they were taken aback to say, okay, take us through. And then the changes that we have made, I said, I've played a critical role. I was a chairperson. of the organization, and we were dealing with many issues, spiritual issues, because a man cannot live off bread alone, but we need that spiritual element. So I was a very, very active person and a spiritual person at the same time. So one of the good days, we invited my bishop, which I serve under, Bishop Benjamin Dube, so that we may be able to have a revival inside the prison. People are lost and out for the last and the final count. People, they have lost hope, in the families. Remember, if you are incarcerated, most of the people are called the black sheep. So the families, they chuck you out. So we said, no, let us just try and unify and, bring the body of Christ together. And we invited different musicians. And then we invited even our humanitarian lawyer, Advocate George Bezos. And then he came, and a lot of people, they didn't believe. They said, you guys are crazy. You think Mr. Advocate George Bezos can leave his office and come here? This is prison. Nothing good can come out of this place. So a lot of people have made a conclusion and saying, this thing will never, ever see the light of day. Remember, if you are sentenced to spend a life or double life in 95 years, already you are dead in your heart. But now there's always hope, because there's always a time and a season on this earth. So if they give you that time, there will come an expiry date. My fear, it's not the time spent in prison, but when you are reintegrated. So when they called me at the parole board, they said to me, we're giving you your best Christmas ever. I was released just before Christmas to be reunited with my family. And I was sentenced, and I started serving a sentence on the 17th. On the 19th, I was out, and I stayed exactly 3.5 years. Normally, they will exceed with 4, 6, 7 months. They said at the record time, Temba, you are our son and our true product with whom we are pleased. So we release you with a blessing. I was home.
We're joined by a caller, Temba. Vusi from KZN. Thank you so much for calling in. What is your comment or question this evening?
Hello, good evening, ma'am.
Good evening, Vusi.
Yes, good evening. No, I'm very fascinated and excited actually to be viewing this program on the TV. This young man who has found his purpose and converted in jail, in prison. My wish and prayer is that he might find as many platforms as possible to express and begin to motivate and inspire as many, the youth. Especially in our times, youth, they're actually into crime, and it's really a problem. And also finding himself an identity in Christ or in God, I think is one thing that must be applauded. I really wish as many youth can take from this and really learn something out of this. This is very inspiring, this is very powerful, and I wish that he can get as much possible, as much exposure as possible.
All right, thank you so much, Vusi, for calling in. Vusi from KZN. Mr. Ramore, as society, where can we start when it comes to helping our youth? We've heard Vusi also touching on that point that our youth needs the help the most.
Our youth needs to be spoken to. They need to, to be mentored. We as the elders, we cannot say it's not our generation. If if we throw back, which means now we are actually not helping them. A guy like Temba, he's doing such a wonderful job, but I did it the other way around. I went to go and speak to the youth. I'm involved with schools. I'm motivating schools because I've realized that our kids have given up on hope and they want shortcuts as well. And this is where I say we need to engage with them. We need to talk to them. They need to stick to their lane. They need to work on their own time zone. It's not going to happen to everybody. Whatever that happened to Temba, we are only going to have one Temba in the whole world. There is no other Temba. So for you to be like Temba, you don't have to go and commit crime, but speak to those that are abapambi. Do you understand? Associate yourself with Temba. When we were sitting there behind the thing, I said to Temba, as long as you don't own what you went through, because if you own what you went through, all the atrocities, meaning that you haven't forgiven yourself. Now, a young man like this one, he has already forgiven himself. He is not owning what he is going through. That is why it's easy for him to share with the outside world. And this is what we need. It's just that we as people, we don't talk about what we are going through. We don't talk about what we went through. Now, I'm sitting here as a father. I know there is a whole lot of young men who are going through challenges in their marriages, but I don't assist them. So what am I doing? Do you understand? That is why I say it's all about us sharing the information. Themba is sharing the information. Already he's given us the picture to say it's not a baby place to be in prison. It's not easy to come back alive. It's not like in war, you know, in a battlefield. So already he's spoken to one life. That life, they must listen to him to say, I'll never do track crime because Themba was there. Themba has already spoken to me. Now with me as an older man, I say, for those who are married or those who are intending to get married, before you get married, talk to those who are married already so that you equip yourself. You know what you are putting yourself into. If you are going to go and do crime, equip yourself first and find out from people like Themba to say, how am I going to pay? Obviously, you are going to pay the price. So now, this is what our youth needs to know. But we need to come together. Because what he did, he said, no, one day he woke up, he decided to steal one of the guns. That was the biggest mistake. How many of our youth are carrying guns out there, unlawful guns? Do you understand? Already he's told them, don't carry guns, because this is where it's leading to you too. Now, as long as we can come together as a community, build each other, and forgive each other. I so wish the world can forgive Themba so that he can go on with this thing.
Themba, it's Youth Month, of course. It's coming to an end, but as society, we try and not make sure that comes to an end so that we can help the youth out there. But I want to find out from you, what are some of the points that you raise when you go out and motivate the youth not to turn to crime?
Yeah. You know, most important thing that they need to know is, you know, if you commit a crime, it doesn't matter whether it takes 10, 20 or 30 years. Time is not of the essence. It will catch up with you. So we're talking about the law of karma and the law of retribution. They are very real among us. So I said, a man who is not at peace with himself can never, never, ever be at peace with the universe. Then there's one thing that is important, Ubaba, that has touched on the issue of society and being reintegrated and being accepted. You know, I always say the enemy of our faith is a specialist on condemnation. People are going to condemn you. If you are there at home and you are seated, then you are saying, you are wondering and saying, I am an ex-con, I am unemployable, and people have, you know, obviously chucked me out. And you must know one thing, Guti. I mean, there's nothing that we could do, but this society does not owe us anything. So you owe it to yourself, you know, to be reintegrated and to fuse. Then with the society, of course, it double jeopardy. It won't really necessarily work because definitely sure, we are a community within a community. The people are sharp, but who has made the bad and the wrong choices. Hence, they found themselves in the most hopeless of places, which is a prison.
And there's also something that I want to touch on where we also know that in terms of your the incarceration, it was for also assaulting your wife as well. We have seen a lot of women who have been dying in the hands of their spouse at the moment. In the news, it has been making a lot of headlines. Most probably each and every week, it's something that we have also noticed. And it seems as if it's also the young youth, the young women who are also getting affected a lot. When it comes to that, what makes a man hit a woman and how can they avoid doing that? What advice do you usually give when it comes to that?
I guess primarily issue ownership. You know, when people, they do things for you, it's more like they own you. And immediately when you agree to disagree or disagree to agree, now it becomes a problem to the other party. Hence, now it's converted into energy they manhandle the next person. But, you know, I mean, I think there is no any other way except for a community to join forces or to join hands. You must understand one thing. There is this issue of ignorance. When something is happening to Wab Joey, and then me and I just turn my back and say, I fully mean. So it is a serious problem. It's a pandemic. That's what kills the society. Now we need to be vigilant. Let us be on the ground. Let us just join forces. If you see something happening, I know good, you might obviously be compromising yourself or be finding yourself in a sticky situation. But if you see something, if you can't act or react at the same time, blow the whistle. Tell the neighbor, make that phone call. And then, I mean, if you see the cars on the freeways by the off-ramps, on-ramps, you see the blue lights, that's called visibility policing. And then that's how we prevent all of these things. So it is unfortunate that at times they would wait for that woman to steal something and say, if you catch this woman before she's stealing, now we can't convict her. Let her steal first, and then if she's caught, it simply means it's right-handed. Then it could be a conviction. But if we come with that mentality, you must know, Guti, we will never rise above the storms of life. So the best thing ever that anybody can ever do, and then let's take care of each other. We are like candles, man. And then a candle does not lose light by giving light to another candle. And then let us just make sure we embrace. I said you cannot give what you don't have. And you can't also withdraw where you did not deposit. So if I love you, love is a doing word. I need to be doing something in your life. Love will just remain a word until somebody comes along and give it a meaning.
Thank you so much for joining me in studio, gentlemen. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you very much. That was in studio Themba Lukele, author, businessman, motivational speaker, aspiring musician and philanthropist. And we were also joined by Joy Ramore, who is a life coach. And of course, we were just discussing the inspirational biography that he has through it all. It's a book that he wrote during his 3.5 years spent in the Boksburg Correctional Center before his release on parole. Right now, Africa Tonight will take a short break. We'll be back with more news and updates. Stay tuned.